All right, hello again, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the evolution of money solutions and going through these four topics. So let's start with the problem of what a person needs, what an individual needs. Individual needs these four things from their money. And the evolution of money shows the step-by-step advancements where each iteration we are getting better at accomplishing these four things that individuals desired with money. So going a little out of order, we'll start with store of value. So our ancestors performing just labor, there was no way to bottle this energy up and store it for later. But once we reached abstract thought and language, we had small tribes, small societies, we had more deliberate exchanges. Individuals could specialize their labor and their energy into types of farming, and they could essentially trade the harvest. So this was a step forward with store of value, but it was still lacking in many ways. You know, cattle don't live forever, eggs only last a few days. And then let's jump right into divisibility. Salt and wheat obviously are very easy to divide. With salt, you could add for a large transaction, you could add salt in addition to cattle to round out the transaction, and also wheat in particular. 5 to 7 thousand years ago, in these early economies, wheat was very important because you could live off of wheat, and most civilized people and most societies were able to use wheat as a unit of account. So you could go almost anywhere and you could price something and you could buy something in the amount of wheat that you thought it was worth. And most items could be measured in wheat. And then for salt, or the word we have today for salary is based on sol, which is the Latin word for salt. As salt was big in the Roman Empire, and the Roman army would sometimes pay soldiers with salt. And tools were a part of this equation also, as well as the raw materials that went into making tools. And there was an important property with tools called scarcity, and we'll go more into this. We'll go more into scarcity. So the value of a tool was worth the amount of time needed to make it, and also the amount of time it would save you each time you used it. And this tool also had it was a store of value. It was the store of this energy, because this tool could last for years. So this was 100 times better than eggs or wheat or cattle. And what's important about the tool is, we began to understand that, a really, really good tool, it was hard to make, there would be less of them. And we put value on this. So if an axe was very sharp, or if you had a bow and arrow that could shoot extremely straight, we recognize the value of this because these items are harder to come by, and this is called scarcity. So we took the same idea and we applied it to money, and by doing so, and this was a big step away from the base layer of energy as money. That we could take an item due to its scarcity, and we could place a value on this item due to its limited supply. And what scarcity did is it gave us this very large step forward, because now we could have a small item like a glass bead. It could represent a ton of monetary value, and this item could also last far longer than a tool. It could last 100 times longer than a tool, so it would keep its value over time. And the same with the seashells. But in these initial solutions, with respect to scarcity, they were good, but they were not good with respect to divisibility and the unit of account, because you can see all the different shapes and sizes here. The societies that used them were also, they were in certain areas, they were geographically limited. So there's plenty of downsides with these solutions, but coinage was the next step we took to start getting after those downsides. And when coinage appeared, it was likely a combination of being independently discovered in each of the major regions, as well as just being shared as a solution amongst the regions. And this was a very valuable. This was very valuable for merchants and traders, and coinage quickly gained traction. And initially, coinage was just these small blank clumps of of metal, and merchants they would carry these scales around with them so they could assess the metal and they could assess the value no matter where they were at. And I guess going back to what a person needs, coinage was a very good solution. So you had gold, silver, and bronze, and they had different degrees of value based on different scarcity. And we'll talk more about this in the gold section. But these differing degrees of values made them very divisible. They were transportable. You could have a very high amount of value in a gold coin at a very low weight. You could transport that value easily, and they would hold their value. So these first gold coins, 5,000 years ago, these coins are worth the same value that they are today. But coinage was still missing this key piece. That coinage had these lack of standards across town to town. This was a huge barrier for society-wide usage or acceptance of coinage on a large scale. And to start getting after this, merchants were trying to standardize their coins. You can see the symbol here, trying to make it more of a unit of account, easier to recognize. But it just wasn't enough. And with the problem that merchants were trying to solve, this was a society-wide problem. Merchants and traders would benefit greatly for the widest acceptance of coinage across as many people and as many societies as possible. So one way to look at this, and just take a step back, there were two ways that we could have gone about taking the next step in terms of money evolution. So option one, a decentralized approach, gain consensus. So this would have been several thousand years ago, gain consensus amongst thousands of people who lived 1,000 miles apart. This would have been very hard to do, if not impossible. Although a note that decentralization is not completely unheard of way back in history. And even though these two examples are both from island communities, that's a key distinction. And we're going to do a quick example on the rye stones. So the only way on the rye stones were on a small island, Yap Island. The only way to get a rye stone was to go on a canoe 400 kilometers away to another island. You would mine the rye stone and then canoe the stone back to Yap Island, and people would own fractions of these stones, and everyone in society knew who owned what fraction of what coin, and fractions were used to trade ownership. So these two people could make a transaction. They could change ownership of 1/100th of a stone, and the whole society knew about it. And there was a very high store of value because these stones were hard to get. And also the rye stones worked for up to 800 years. So this was a really good decentralized example of money. But that was for that's for a small island. The much larger society, going back to the much larger society, and then this option two, the centralization, which is what actually happened. So really the easier route was to gain support from trusted society leaders, which was essentially the government. And then going back to what a person needs. So, we're here at coinage, these blank clumps of coinage. If we could get government endorsement, this would be a great next step to solve this last item, and we would have really the perfect conditions for money. But there was a trade-off. So with government endorsement, we would get advantages of wide standardizations, like counterfeit, for example. The government can deal with that with laws and harsh punishments. But there were a number of downsides and a number of risks. And basically, what we desired, we wanted to have this setup, but we wanted this circle to be as small as absolutely possible, or not even exist, basically. We wanted the middleman out of the way, doing nothing, and that would have been a perfect, perfect solution for the next step with coinage. So society elects government, and government comes to the table, and it did not take long. Government placed themselves as the central authority, essentially as in charge of money. And government quickly realized how useful it is to be in, how politically useful it is to be in charge of a society's money. And some of this might come across as cynical. We'll go through this. Government brought their own agenda to the table, and their agenda was markedly different than what society needed. So, and what this did was this changed the trajectory of money. This is about 5,000 years ago. So this is when it started. So money did achieve good wide standardization, and this was good. But now, instead of the store of value reversed its trend. So instead of scarcity, we had namely inflation. And we're going to introduce now quickly it's the problem of trust, and we're going to revisit this topic many times in our future. But this individual here has very little control over his or her property of money. And we're going to do a quick example of what this looks like with inflation. And for the inflation example, we'll go over the money problem from the government's point of view, how inflation solves this problem, and you'll get to see how inflation works. So here we go. So we have a government has to provide 4 services, and there are 10 people here in the society. So these 10 people, they each have 20 coins, and then the services cost a total of 20 coins. So the government takes 20 coins. Everyone pays 10% tax. There is 200 total coins in this society. And then here's the problem. Here's the government's money problem. This usually stems from war, but it could be anything where the government needs more money. And these prior requirements are very hard to change or take away from. So one option to fund this is just take an extra coin per person, and that could be that would be a 50% increase in taxes. Or another option, and this is inflation, is to clip 5% off of each coin, and in this society, the government can make 10 new coins. And this is just a picture of what these clipped coins used to look like. And here's how this would unfold. So people closest to the money creation are typically the ones that benefit. So here we're going to call this person a teacher, and this person is a soldier. Taxes still had to get raised a little bit because the cost of these services didn't go down. Just we have to make up for this 5% clip out of each coin by adding in this little bit here. So everyone's going to pay a little bit more out of their 18th coin. But the clippings all across society created these 10 new coins down here, which enabled the funding of these 2 new items. So the total number of coins hasn't changed. It's just via these clippings, money has been reallocated. And the effects of this can add up in a big way. So 5%, so we take our example and compound it out over 5 years. These 2 guys now have 35% of the society's wealth. And the original services, they haven't changed. The taxes had to go up by an extra coin per person. And again, we still have 200 total coins in this society. The total wealth hasn't changed. It's just the government has reallocated it to where it wants it to be. And because because inflation is gradual and it happens over many years. It's just a it's just a small clipping it starts off with. It's very easy for this to go unchecked, even unnoticed. That's why inflation is usually called the hidden tax, and it's much preferred than to officially raising taxes. And then back to the evolution of money. This inflation started with coinage, and this was the reversing the trend of scarcity. This started with coinage, the government standardization of coinage, and then paper money. Even though initially it was backed by metal, it gave the government more options for inflation. And then paper money not backed by metal was just a continuation of that trend. And then government also has relationships with banks, developed relationships with banks, which further enabled all four of these items. And then all said, standardization did happen. Like the U.S. dollar, for example, you can use it. You can use U.S. dollars almost anywhere in the world. And we're going to talk a lot more on these 4 points as we go through the gold and banking sections. So in conclusion, the characteristics of good money emerged as individuals and societies were finding better and better solutions for the need and the problem to cooperate and to exchange. And 5,000 years ago, there was a central authority, a middleman was inserted into money. This gave us the problem of trust. This changed the evolution of money, and the scarcity began a reverse trend. So thanks, and see y'all next time.